The Democrat running to unseat incumbent Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has picked up a few endorsements from Republicans. Mike Collier is hoping those translate into more crossover votes on Election Day, and he'll need a lot of those to win. One survey of registered voters shows Patrick with an 11-point lead over Collier. Those numbers from a poll by the Dallas Morning News and the University of Texas at Tyler. It's an uphill climb, but as Monica Madden shows us, Collier is working to find a path to victory.
A principled conservative fighting for Texas.
In the race for lieutenant governor,
I know a lot of good Texas Republicans, and Dan Patrick ain't one of them.
Democratic nominee Mike Collier is betting big.
A lot of Republican men are going to cross over and they're going to vote for us.
Giving another go at unseating Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick for a second time.
Texans are really tired of partisan warfare.
His campaign tells us Collier has met with more than a dozen elected Republicans. Two of them publicly endorsed him.
They're not viewing this race, Mike Collier versus Dan Patrick, as a Democrat versus Republican partisan brawl. They're viewing it as which one of these two is going to provide the leadership to solve these problems.
Two-term incumbent Dan Patrick has largely avoided mention of his opponent's name, but when he does,
Mike Collier would be a disaster as lieutenant governor.
Patrick aims to tie Collier to his former boss and candidate Joe Biden.
Think Lubbock or West Texas, where Texas wants to vote for a local Joe Biden, saving you thousands of dollars.
Patrick hopes his record as the most powerful lawmaker will win him the seat again.
Great confidence that Greg Abbott will win, I'll win, and we'll do very well.
Still, 32% of voters disapprove strongly of the job Patrick is doing, according to a new UT Texas Politics Project poll. That poll shows Patrick with a 7-point lead in this race, but it also shows 20% of registered voters haven't made up their mind yet. Monica Madden, State of Texas.
As Monica mentioned, this is Collier's second time to challenge Patrick. Back in 2018, Patrick won re-election. He topped Collier by slightly less than 5 percentage points. Voter turnout could be a big factor in the outcome this time around. Our Will Dupree spoke to Collier about the issues driving his campaign.
As you're out on the campaign trail, obviously activities are ramping up, but what are the issues that you're hearing the most from voters out there?
Oh, we have to fix the damn grid. I mean, that's a real concern. I know that the winter storm was a year and a half ago, but winter's coming. Texans know that we haven't fixed the grid. They're very worried about it. They're very frustrated that our leaders won't do it. So we have to fix the grid. That's very important to Texans.
Another topic that a lot of voters have on top of mind is property taxes. They're feeling the burden from that financially and they want some sort of relief. How does your plan differentiate itself from what Dan Patrick is offering?
Until we have an honest accounting of taxes in the state, we're never going to solve the property tax crisis. I've been talking about this for years. The fact is, whether it's schools, whether it's county government, it's a joint venture between state and local. Local taxes always go up, so state does less. The state and Dan Patrick, they allow those property taxes to explode because then they look at the state budgets and they say, hooray, we have a surplus. You see that happening right now. Until we close those big corporate loopholes and get those guys back in this game, Republicans, Dan Patrick, are only mocking us. I mean, he has been talking about reducing property taxes for 10 years. Where have they gone? Just up, because they aren't being honest with us.
You recently appeared in a campaign ad with Democratic Attorney General nominee Rochelle Garza, specifically highlighting some of the abortion restrictions that current leaders have passed here in Texas. Realistically, what could you do as Lieutenant Governor to address or change some of those?
That trigger law, which by the way, it was Dan Patrick that passed that trigger law, so that when Roe v. Wade was overturned, that means in cases of rape, in cases of incest, life and health of the mother, they can't seek care. That is an absolute disaster for the state. Democrats know that. Many Republicans know that. And so what we have to do is change that immediately. I'm often asked, what's the first thing you'll do as Lieutenant Governor? We have to fix the grid, and we have to solve that problem because women are going to die in this state, and it's just not right. And Dan Patrick is at the heart of this crisis.
You also, during this campaign, have highlighted your past as a Republican. Why is that exactly? Why highlight that portion of your background?
I think it's important for people to know who I am. And I'll also say this, I mean, I think Texans are really tired of partisan warfare, right? So it puts me in a position where I talk honestly about my career as a businessman, as an energy guy. I used to be a Republican. that I can build a coalition not only across the state but across the aisle. Now, when does that ever happen? When you're running for office. That's what this allows me to do. It's very rewarding. The response from Texans on both sides of the aisle is very, very positive. And then, if I'm honored to be Lieutenant Governor, we can actually roll up our sleeves and get things done.
Lieutenant Governor Patrick has made property tax relief a key part of his re-election campaign. Politics reporter Ryan Chandler interviewed Patrick during a stop in Lubbock. He spoke about how some of the state's $27 billion budget surplus could go back to Texas taxpayers.
Our budget is 52% roughly for education. Our total state budget, 52% education, about 14% is higher ed, and the other 38% is public ed. 35% or so is healthcare, so that's 87%, and 11% public safety. So between three issues, public education, healthcare, and public safety, is about 95% or so of our budget. And so it always, you know, where your treasure is where your heart is, where your heart is where your treasure is. It's biblical scripture there. We put the most money in public education of all of our budget. So the $27 billion, those extra dollars, we're going to do two things. The governor's agreed. I've already agreed. I said it right away. We're going to send a big tax dividend back to property tax payers, homeowners, several $1 billion worth. And when my opponent, Mike Collier, says, well, we haven't anything on property taxes, stop. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Number one, the homestead exemption was $15,000 when I became lieutenant governor. It's $40,000 today. That alone saves every taxpayer. They take $40,000 off the top of the price of their home. They don't have to pay taxes on it. Next session, we'll take it to $55,000. We'll get it to $100,000. Mike Collier doesn't have a clue how to pass a bill, more or less do something as complex and complicated as that. And number two, Mike Collier says in his speeches, he's going to raise property taxes on business. He's going to raise the franchise tax, and he's going to raise the gas tax. Remember, he's Joe Biden's guy for Texas. The other thing we've done on property taxes, and people are going to see it this year, look, there was a time when whenever your appraisal went up, your tax bill went up the same, and it's complicated, but we took that and broke it in half. So you want your property to grow in value, so one day when you sell it, it's worth more than you paid for it, but you don't want to be taxed on that value. So when you get your property tax bills, which will start coming out in October, those who had these big appraisals are going to say that the taxes did not fail, because we passed a bill in 19 that Mike Collier doesn't even understand, that says county governments cannot grow more than 3.5% unless they want to get a vote of the people. And school districts are capped at 2.5%. They were growing at 7%, and we are using sales tax money that we collect to reimburse the school districts for that property tax. So as the values go up, the cities and counties have to lower their tax rate to keep it within 3.5%, which is kind of population and inflation. And if they want more, they can go to the people and say, hey, I need more money for fire, police, and the people can decide like they do for a bond issue or anything else. So my opponent has no idea what he's even talking about.
There's much more to our conversations with Dan Patrick and Mike Collier. You can see those full interviews online now. Just scan the QR code on your screen. It will take you to the links in the Texas Politics section of our website. Time is quickly running out to register for the November election. What new Texas laws will mean when it's time to count the votes?